Welcome back, everybody, to your 5-minute therapy today. I'm Monica, and I am back talking about feeling good in our bodies, myofascial release that you may know about or not know about. If you don't, you need to learn about it. This is what I'm here for, and this is what I'm doing all day long. So, I want to talk about one subject of profound importance to our lives, especially to women, but also to men. But I will direct this to women a bit more today because we are going to be talking about the pelvis. Here we go. It's a plastic pelvis, not a real one. But I want you to get on this short little life journey here with me and learn a little bit more about why pelvis is such a hugely important part of your body and what we can do about it. And also, how does it affect our emotions, our physical levels of pain or well-being, and why why we don't speak enough about pelvis. Well, this is my question: why we're not speaking enough about pelvis? We have to speak about it more and create more awareness of how important this part of the body is. And the myofascial system, if you've been coming to treatments, if you've been following me, you know that myofascial system in the body is what connects, holds, and keeps everything together in our bodies. So this is just a bone model, right? But imagine there's tissues inside, around it, everywhere around it. You can sort of touch your belly a bit and see, well, yes, all of that stuff is here. I'm not just bones, most of us, right? We have tissues. We have, and don't think fat, because I know that women always say, oh, I'm just fat, I have a belly. No, it's not just that. There is, we all need a certain amount of fat, by the way, but there's also tissues, connective tissue and muscles. So this is pelvic floor here that is filled with musculature, right? Meaning muscles that move, open and close, become sometimes really, really tight. And by being extremely tight, they can create a tremendous amount of pain. And you may know, or maybe even you are suffering from pelvic pain. It can be extremely disruptive to your entire life. It makes it hard to sit, to do any basic functions. It makes sexual activity pretty much impossible for many women. So we got to speak about those subjects more and become aware of how important it is to treat our pelvises right. So I have a lot to say about it. I'm just going to say a few words. And as you know, I come back here every week or even more often to talk with you about those subjects. So today what I wanted to talk about is based on my interview that I've recently conducted with Dr. Evelyn Hecht, and she's a physical therapist, and I've learned something really important from her. It was about neuroplasticity. And so you can go back to the interview. It's actually on the VIP Femtech Summit website. And if you don't know, reach out to me and I can send you some info about that and also what she does. I would love to do that. But so she brought one thing to my attention, which is neuroplasticity. And what is it? Well, our brain is actually, we are able to change our perception of our body by doing that consciously and by becoming conscious of how we are relating to our body. And we can change those neural pathways in our brain to start to perceive our body differently. So for a lot of people, and say for a woman who maybe went through a lot of pelvic surgeries, maybe she went through C-sections, other pelvic trauma. Also for men, a lot of men had prostate surgery. They've had sports injuries where they fell down on their coccyx, for example, which is the tailbone. And a lot of injuries that are related to the pelvis, because the pelvis is in the middle, pretty much in the middle of our body. It's the balance point. So we're not taught, and we're not really made conscious anywhere on the importance of this bone structure and the tissue surrounding it. It's sort of veiled in mystery, especially when we talk about working on the pelvis internally, which also is potentially is possible to be done. A lot of physical therapists and myofascial release therapists do that, and it's a profoundly effective way of reducing pain, not just in the pelvis, should you be suffering from it, but also pain from your lower back, from your hips, from your neck sometimes, because the pelvis is the center of gravity, is the center of balance for us. So if we're crooked and twisted, if I'm not sitting right or standing right, my neck is never going to be happy, right? So I always repeat that to my clients. So one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about today, and we'll be continuing on this subject, is that very interestingly, and this is especially about women, what I've learned is that women really store their emotional responses in the pelvis. So when I spoke with Dr. Evelyn Hecht, she told me that there was a study that women were exposed to some violent images, pictures, and motion pictures. And they were measured, they had sensors all over their body, and they were measured on their responses. So the pelvis, where they had also had the sensors, right? The pelvis down around your lower belly and around your hips, actually contracted and responded the most and the first to those negative images that they've been exposed to. So the body, it was before the brain did, before the conscious brain did, before jaw, neck, and every other part of the body did. The pelvis actually responded first. And I have a suspicion that for men, it may be actually very similar. I don't know of any study. I do want to dig into that and learn that. So our pelvis not only can be exposed to physical trauma, like I mentioned, surgeries, a birth trauma for women, or C-sections, which are also a surgery and very extensive, by the way, or a physical, trauma where you fall down, when you injure your coccyx, when you injure your hips, all of that impacts the pelvis. But also emotionally, if we go through something difficult, it turns out the pelvis will actually contract and tighten first. So imagine your life, if you may be 40 or 50 or even 35, even 15, how many years we all went through different, negative situations. Imagine that the body, that part of the body, the pelvis, was always responding as tightening, tensing, and creating that tension in the body. So if you sort of look at that from that bigger perspective, you start to understand our body stores pain and discomfort. And now the question is, what do we do to unravel it, to undo it? Well, there's many different techniques. And with myofascial release, we don't necessarily do like a straightforward meditation or, those techniques where you are meditating or relaxing. These are really good, but they may be sort of a bit superficial. What we do, we actually access the tissues. We use our hands, right? We use other tools, which I speak about on other occasions, and I'll come back and teach you some more techniques on how to use some tools to release the pelvis. But we use our hands to connect to the tissues. And let me show you, I'm just going to move this computer. Say, for example, I put my hands on my lower abdomen and on my sacrum in the back. So if I show you here, I put my hands sort of around like this, right? This is the sacrum. Sacrum's in the back, right here, right here. So you see this sacrum. Okay, I'm still navigating my camera here. This is the sacral bone, and this is the front of the pelvis. This is the pubic bone, and these are two bones, right? A joint with a, see here, joint, and so they can move. So I'm just simply putting my hands around my pelvis. And you can do it maybe laying down. I mean, if you don't have access to a therapist today, you can just lay down and clasp your pelvis between your hands, or even sitting. I'm sitting on the chair right now and I'm just clasping my lower belly and that pubic bone area and the sacrum. And I'm just connecting and having that image of my hands just radiating that positive, warm light into those tissues between my hands. So I'm always thinking between. I'm not just thinking on the surface. I'm not thinking the skin. I'm thinking what's between my hands. And I'm imagining that there's like a balloon between my hands. So I don't want to squeeze it too hard to make it pop, but I also don't want to be off of it so it escapes, right? If I have a hydrogen balloon in my hands, if I don't hold it, it's going to escape and go away. So I want to hold it gently and just sort of give it a little pressure. So you can practice that and kind of play around even right now, sitting. Put your hands around your pelvis. You can put them around your hips if you prefer, just to play around with it and see how that feels. Okay, I'm putting my hands on my hip bones. I like it this way. We call it the transverse plane, and we do a lot of that technique in myofascial release treatments. So when we touch the parts of our body with our hands, or a therapist does that to the person, we're actually able to start to help the body release that trauma that's stored in the tissues. Okay, all that trauma, negative experiences, that tensing, that memory of tightening and tensing that maybe came from the past negative emotional experiences, we are able to start to activate it and help it come up to surface. I always say it comes up to surface. Sometimes you may actually have images and memories past. Maybe you fell down. Maybe when you were 5 years old, something happened and you got really, really scared. And you imagining that 5-year-old little girl or boy, and like, oh, they just suddenly come to you. And this is that piece of your body that's stored in the tissues, that memory, that hologram of the past that's still stuck in your tissues, and it's still there, living there and creating that constant negative response and tightening and defense and protection. We don't want that, because if our pelvis is protecting itself constantly and tensing, the tissues become at some point painful. You lose your mobility. You also may start feeling a lot of anxiety. Your body's sort of off, right? If we don't have the right foundation, um, our body is not going to be stable and grounded and centered. So the journey is all about releasing those emotional residues and memories from the tissues. And the pelvis is a fantastic way or place to start, because, like I said, it seems like it's the place that stores the most traumatic events, past emotions that responds first to trauma. So I just want to leave you with this little technique for today, your 5-minute therapy. I'm going to invite you to either sit down or lay down and just clasp your pelvis. Again, I'm going to show you on the bone model. Just clasp your pelvis between your hands. Just breathe deeply, allow yourself to relax, and just kind of holding, with loving, kind energy, holding that part of the body without trying to elicit any response, but just allowing it to come up. And if memories or emotions come up, just let them pass through you, let them be released. This is what we do. So please leave your comments. Tell me how it went once you did it, and what you've experienced, and what else did you want to learn. And we'll be coming back and teaching you more on those subjects. Well, have a beautiful rest of the weekend, and I cannot wait to talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.